It's day 7 of the Russian-Ukrainian war. 7 days ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. It is absolutely devastating and disappointing to me that as a human species, we still engage in barbaric warfare. Yet, 2022, and we are watching a war take place. As I said, it started 7 days ago. In this morning's video, we're going to be looking at what is actually happening in Ukraine, a very simplistic overview of the war and what is going on there. In addition to that, we're going to be looking at how this is going to affect the cryptocurrency space and what it means for cryptocurrency going forward. Good morning, everybody. Now, before we do that, let's have a quick look at the markets. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, in the very beginning, on day 1 and 2, we saw the markets really plummet. Devastating drop in the markets. But since then, we've seen a healthy bounce back. Is this related to the war, or is this just the nature of crypto coming back and being volatile? As we can see, we got Bitcoin up just under 17% at $44,314 US. We got Ethereum back over the $3,000 US mark, barely holding on. We've got Binance Coin above the $400 US mark with an increase of over 9% in the last 7 days. We've got XRP up 8%. We've got Terra Luna at a whopping 65% increase, putting it at $93 US. Solana, one of my favorite coins, back over $100, holding strong. And as you can see, the market in green. Now, what is actually happening in Russia and what we need to know about this conflict? Something that to me seems very suspicious is that the Russian government and the central bank agreed to treat Bitcoin as currency. We notice that just days before the invasion, the Russian government and the central bank agreed to give Bitcoin some credibility. Is this coincidence? Or is this based on the fact that Putin knew he was going to invade Ukraine and that there would be international sanctions and he would need to open up as many avenues as possible to fund his war? Talking about the international sanctions, we can see that the international community has come down hard on Russia. They've cut the SWIFT network. They've really imposed heavy economic sanctions. And what this has caused is the Russian ruble to drop over 30%. Analysts expect a total collapse. The reason for this, quite simply, is that no one wants the Russian ruble after the sanctions, and therefore the value of this Russian ruble has dropped dramatically. Now, what we're seeing here is that the governments of both Ukraine and Russia and the international governments are using the economic power that they have to manipulate the people, to manipulate the country. We are not only seeing a physical war, a war with tanks and bombs and soldiers on the ground, but we are seeing a financial war, an economic war, where the international community is manipulating Russia with sanctions, trying to devalue their currency and cut off their funding to fund the war any further. We're seeing the Russians striking back on their own people, not allowing them to withdraw their money, restricting the amount of money that they can withdraw. We're seeing ATMs, not only in Russia, but in Ukraine, running out of money. Both of the currencies in these countries is under heavy, heavy pressure. So we've seen two wars, financial war and an economic war. But what is very important and pertinent in this situation is that we are seeing that the Ukrainian government, or at least on Twitter, we've seen a plea for funds in cryptocurrency. And we've seen the crypto community rise to the occasion and donate to either the assistance of Ukraine to keep their liberation and keep the freedom and keep their country, or funding a war, whichever way you want to frame the funding of this situation. And if we look at Etherscan, we can see that this has been a very successful outcry. There's been over 9,800 transactions on this account. I believe it is legitimate. Obviously, we've got to be very, very wary of scams whenever anyone's asking for cryptocurrency donations. Now, we've seen our own president, Cyril Ramaphosa, come out and say that Russia must immediately withdraw from Ukraine and that they must enter into negotiations to try and resolve this in a peaceful manner. I'd like to suggest that it's a lot more complex from that. What does Vladimir Putin want? He wants, in my opinion, to take over Ukraine and to make it part of Russia. After the fall of the USSR, the Russian Federation, in 1991, Putin has sought to get the countries back and restore the former glory of Russia. Now, so negotiations under those circumstances where he wants to take over a country obviously can't happen. It seems insane, because how would those negotiations look? Would you say, hey, Putin, stop it? You'd go, no, I want to take over the country. Okay, I'm sure Ukraine doesn't want to give up their freedom, so negotiations in these circumstances, at least with my understanding of the situation, are not going to work. Now, you might be thinking, that is absolutely insane. How can someone take over a country in 2022? It makes absolutely no sense. The international community are not going to allow Russia to take over Ukraine. But hold on a second. Let's look at what has happened in our very, very recent history. In 1954, we had the Soviet leader give Crimea to Ukraine as a gift. So in 1954, Soviet leader gave Ukraine a country. Now this didn't sit well with Putin, because in 2014, Putin decided to invade Crimea. He invaded it, and there was war. There were a lot of negotiations. The people were protesting, striking. But to make a long story short, there was a referendum held, and the people voted for their country to go back under Russia. Now, whether they voted in that way because they felt it was the right decision, or whether they voted that way because they realized that they were in a war situation, and a war that could possibly continue for years, and the only way for them to live a reasonable life would be back under the Russian Federation, we don't know. The international community also questioned and queried whether the referendum that was held, that gave the people the opportunity to vote whether they would stay Ukrainian or go under the Russian umbrella, was fair and just. But putting that all aside, Crimea went over to Russia. The point I'm trying to make here is that in 2014, we saw Russia successfully seize another country. It's only a couple of years later, 2022. Is it possible, under similar or exactly the same circumstances, for Vladimir Putin to do what he's done only a couple of years ago and to get Ukraine back into the Russian umbrella? Speculation, who knows? But in my mind, that seems a very viable situation and what he's trying to do. And if that is what he's trying to do, negotiations are not going to assist anyone at any stage, because the goal and the mission is very clear from the Russian leader. Now, guys, our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts go out to not only the Ukrainian people, but also the Russian people. Ukrainian government is also not innocent. They are not allowing able-bodied men to leave the country. So in other words, if you make it to the Polish border and you have the opportunity to flee the war situation, the Ukrainian government has forbidden men between the ages of 16 and 60 to leave the country, which means that you might be in a very difficult situation if you made it to the Polish border, because you have to make a choice whether you will let your family go to safety or if you want to keep your family into a unit. Absolutely terrible times for the Ukrainian people. So we've seen the economic powers at play. We've seen the physical battle rolling out in front of our very eyes. We don't know how long this situation is going to continue. I think when it comes to cryptocurrency, if the question is this going to be good or bad for the markets? First of all, it just doesn't feel right to worry about investments and whether your portfolio is up or down when people are dying on the streets of Ukraine. But putting that aside, I think realistically any analyst cannot unwrap or unravel the complexity of this situation. But one thing that does shine through that we can take away for the long term of cryptocurrency is that cryptocurrency is being seen by the world as a very serious alternative to the financial system that we have. In other words, the Russian government and the Ukrainian government have identified cryptocurrencies as a serious, powerful, alternative financial system in a very, very serious situation. So guys, whether the price is going to go up or down is anybody's guess. But Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are a serious economic power, and that is what we can see has unraveled here. Now, out of respect for the Russian and the Ukrainian people that are being forced into devastating circumstances by their government and their rulers, I have chosen not to monetize this video in any way. Guys, if you like this content, I'd ask you to smash the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next week.